Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today, it's an in memoriam, episode 48, Kraven the Hunter, the final Sony Pictures universe of Marvel movies, Sony Pictures universe of Marvel Comics movies. What's the spunk? I don't know if they ever came up with an official acronym, but I'm excited to talk about it. I had a lot of expectations going in. Most of them did come true, unfortunately, but maybe a little bit of surprise. I hope you are all doing well. I hope you are all coping in what is the beginning of awards season. It is hard to catch up. This week, we've had two major awards announcements for nominations. We've had the Golden Globes and the Critics' Choice Awards. Definitely one of them was a lot better than the other. I would say the Golden Globes, I think they expanded their people that vote, or the what do you call that? The Academy, whatever, the nominators to like 300 people from a much smaller number. So it's a lot more of a varied opinion pool, I guess, but very interesting. I think definitely some misses in there. No Denis Villeneuve in the directing category. Sing Sing pretty largely snubbed. Critics' Choice Awards, however, I think they largely nailed it on the head, apart from cinematography, not including the cinematographer for all three of Luca's films this year, or two, I guess. A little strange, and including Wicked in cinematography is pretty insane. But look, folks, this is just the beginning, and if you want more of a explained Golden Globe takeaway video, let me plug my social media videos from this week first. So I did a little Golden Globes reaction, of course, Dune Prophecy, and I did a Creature Commandos episode 1 and 2 review. It's a little bit hard to do it like the next day after it comes out. I think the episodes come out on Wednesday night / Thursday morning, like 3 a.m. or something like that, but in Canada, they don't really air on Adult Swim until Friday night, I think. Plugging lots of stuff there, as well as a review for Dear Santa from this week's holiday watch. Next week, we're going to have another holiday movie for you guys. I'm going to do every Thursday up to Christmas. Apparently, we're getting a Superman trailer next week is what I've heard, so I think I'll do a video for the socials for that. Before we get into the news, because there's lots of news to talk about this week, timestamps below. If you don't want to know any of the spoilers in Kraven, but you're okay with the non-spoiler section, you can find all the chapters below. We got the news, non-spoilers, spoilers, what else I watched, lots of good stuff to talk about, and what else I watched. Yeah, without further ado, I think we should get into it. Let's jump into the news here. I love that I said, let's jump into the news, and then I just sat here, took a sip of my coffee, and didn't open the news on my phone. But all right, here we go. Russian Timothy Chalamet, Mark Edelstein, has apparently been cast in Mr. and Mrs. Smith Season 2. Now, we reviewed Mr. and Mrs. Smith for this show. I loved Season 1 very much. It's looking like Season 2 will be with a completely different Mr. and Mrs. Smith. We will not know the follow-up of what happened to Childish Gambino and Maya Erskine's Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So I would say disappointing to me, but it's kind of fun that we're going to get a completely different cast, a lot like Beef Season 2. I honestly do think Mr. and Mrs. Smith was an extremely underrated show this year. I'm happy, speaking of Golden Globes, that Maya Erskine got a nomination at the Golden Globes for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. She also got an Emmy nomination, and that would be the summer, I guess. So, yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Smith was a friggin' awesome show. I recommend it to people when everyone's like, oh, TV wasn't really good this year. I'm like, did you watch Mr. and Mrs. Smith? Did you watch The Bear? But I think it's a really fascinating choice. Mark Edelstein, he's phenomenal in Anora. I am a little bit surprised he's not getting any Best Supporting Actor. I'm very happy that the guy who played Igor, I can't remember his name right now, pardon me. I'm very happy he's getting lots of love and lots of nominations. Same with Mikey Madison. She is now nominated for both Critics' Choice and Golden Globe. So I think it's a very good indication for the Best Actress Oscars nomination / who's going to win. I think it's looking good for her. But he's very funny, Mark Edelstein. Like, he's hilarious in Anora. I'm very excited to see kind of what his spin on the Mr. Smith character is. Is he going to be like, I don't know. Here's my pitch. He's a young Russian that escapes the country because he doesn't politically believe in the country anymore after the war in Ukraine, so he moves to America. He was in foreign intelligence, or he was in intelligence or whatever. He's a young military person, comes to America, then he has to look for a job, so he joins up with the Mr. and Mrs. Smith program. What was it called? Hi. And showrunner Francesca Sloan, who wrote it with Childish Childish Gambino. Originally, it was Phoebe Waller-Bridge who was on board, right? I almost said Phoebe Bridgers, but that would be confusing. Shout out Boy Genius. So it's looking like it's going to be an anthology series, swapping out the actors every season. I think, honestly, as much as you do want the closure and like a follow-up of, oh, what happened to them, it's kind of fun just seeing a whole new spy team and seeing the program continue on and in other variations versus splitting the story between our old and a new cast of characters. I'd rather just have like a clean start every season. So I'm pumped. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I think it's looking like season 2 will come out in 2025, probably I would say end of year. This should be very fun. Let's talk about some other casting news. Jeremy Allen White joins the Star Wars film The Mandalorian and Grogu as Jabba the Hutt's son. So he's playing Rada the Hutt, who I think was Rada was a big part of the Clone Wars, right? That's what not the Clone Wars. What am I saying? Star Wars Rebels or something like that. I think Rada has been in some of the animated material is what I gather from that. So at first I did not believe this was a real headline, and I even tweeted like, this is one of the most fake sentences I've ever heard in my life. Jeremy Allen White joins Glip Glop as shit stain or whatever. You know, it's just like one of those made up chronically online headlines that only if you're a Star Wars fan and you know who all these people are and what all this shit is. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. That movie I think is getting the December 2026 release. Is that right? Instead of another TV show or another season of the TV show, which I don't know, it kind of was diminishing returns with The Mandalorian. Season 1, amazing. Season 2, pretty good. Season 3, very disappointing. So I understand why it looks like they're just going to wrap up The Mandalorian with a movie instead, and that's all going to come together in a Thrawn film. I know Ahsoka season 2 is happening. Book of Boba Fett not happening. So it looks like we'll have one more TV show season of that universe, of like the Mandalorian universe with Thrawn. Then it's going to culminate in 2 movies. So there'll be the Mandalorian movie, and then I think Thrawn movie. So it'll be like a bigger threat movie. So interesting. I mean, it is nice to have Star Wars back in theaters because it's a movie medium. You know, Star Wars is movies. It's been TV shows for very many years, but it would be nice to get excited again for a Star Wars project. Here's my wish list of what I want the Star Wars movies to be. I want it to be much more in the tone of The Mandalorian season 1, where it's not just kind of action figures hitting together. I want it to be much more like detective-y cowboy vibes than that. I want the production value. Ditch season 2 and season 3 of The Mandalorian. Go back to season 1. I know you're not going to be able to get Greg Fraser, but get an actual cinematographer on board. Don't just make it look like every other Disney Plus TV show. I really want the production value to be high if you're going to bring Star Wars back in that medium. Have a finished script going into the project. That's one thing that I think DC is definitely going to start having an edge over Disney things, is having set scripts going into projects, because that has been the plague of many Star Wars projects going into them, whether it's The Rise of Skywalker or Rogue One or Solo, and movies being reshot completely or people being fired last minute, stuff like that. I need them to basically get their shit together, I guess is what I'm saying. Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, everybody get your shit together, because if you want people to care about Star Wars again, you need to show that effort was put in. We don't just want content. We want art. We want Star Wars to be art. Like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I am excited for a Mandalorian movie. It would be nice to get a much more focused story of The Mandalorian versus like season 2. I did like season 2, apart from, I don't know, the story does feel a little bit less focused, and season 3 was kind of a mess to me. It was all over the place, not really a story going on. But I think if you give us a 2-hour Mandalorian movie, one problem to solve, one issue, one conflict, it could be a lot better because of how focused it is. Not a huge fan of Dave Filoni's writing, and Jon Favreau, I think in season 2 and season 3 lost it a little bit, but season 1 is electric of The Mandalorian. So Jeremy Allen White, very interesting that he's kind of branching into the franchise. He's doing that Bruce Springsteen film as well, and then I guess he was like, one for them, one for me. I guess, you know, he's gonna do his little biopic movie that he's gonna be happy with. He's got The Bear going on, which I think they're shooting this summer, and it's gonna come out later in the year. I don't know, it's gonna be weird seeing Jeremy Allen White. I think he's just voicing him though, that's the thing. But even then, like, hearing Jeremy Allen White's voice be Jabba the Hutt's son, that's odd. I hope he actually does like a really goofy voice. I don't want him to just be himself. I want him to go nuts, give us something else to hear. That would be so much fun. All right, here's a little bit of a throwback. Deadline is reporting that Robert De Niro, Ben Stiller, Terry Polo, and Blythe Danner are in early talks to star in a new Meet the Parents film. So, Meet the Parents, or Meet the Fockers, as some people kind of call it. It was a long time ago. I love that first movie. Even the second one is still very funny as well. Meet the Parents is the first one. It's about Gaylord Fokker, or Greg as he goes by, played by Ben Stiller, goes to meet Robert De Niro, who is his father-in-law and his mother-in-law, and turns out the father-in-law is like a former FBI, CIA agent dude. A hilarious movie, one of my favorite comedies, and even Meet the Fockers is pretty good. Then they did a third movie called Little Fockers. I'm guessing that it's going to be Greg and what's his girlfriend's or wife's name, I guess. It's going to be their kids bringing home their significant others, and then Robert De Niro's now grandpa or older grandpa that's meeting their future grandchildren in-laws or whatever. So I don't know, this could be fun, but plot details are being kept inside the circle of trust. John Hamburg, who co-wrote all 3 prior films in the franchise and produced the most recent Little Fockers, is set to write the screenplay. No word yet on who's directing. I wouldn't be surprised if Ben Stiller maybe stepped in to direct. He's a good director. He's done Severance. He did Tropic Thunder as well. But into some more mainstream big news that hit everyone this week. We are, of course, getting the American Psycho remake, or like another adaptation because it is a book. Luca Guadagnino, who's done Challengers, Call Me By Your Name, Bones and All, most recently Queer. He is doing the new one, which I think is a very interesting pick, to be honest. I wasn't like massively excited. I feel like the first adaptation with Christian Bale probably took the book as far as it could go, but this one's apparently going to be very different and much more erotic. Not surprised because it is Luca Guadagnino, but it was long rumored that is Jacob Elordi going to be the new Patrick Bateman, because there was that photo of Jacob Elordi and Luca Guadagnino having lunch one day. So it's just been kind of assumed that it would be him for the last couple months since this project was announced. Well, this week, huge breaking news that it's actually Austin Butler, according to Variety, poised to star as Patrick Bateman in Luca Guadagnino's American Psycho. That's a big get. I, at first, was surprised. I was like, oh, Austin Butler, like he's working with another big director. He's currently working with Aronofsky. I think obviously Denis Villeneuve, Baz Luhrmann, Quentin Tarantino, The Bike Riders, he just did that movie as well. It is weird to see online people being like, oh, we're getting an oversaturation of Austin Butler. He's genuinely been in like 5 movies. 1 to 2 movies a year, if even. He's not everywhere. It's just that he's a popular movie star. He's in the press. There's a difference. So I actually think it's kind of a good pick. I think he can really bring in the range of Patrick Bateman. I think seeing, and this is going to sound nuts, but walk with me. Seeing him as Fade Rotha actually showed that, oh yeah, he can play a psychopath. And it's kind of an inspired pick for Patrick Bateman. I mean, he's very handsome. He's a good looking dude. I think he can definitely pull off like the aesthetic perfectionist element of Patrick Bateman. I think he can do the finance bro type thing. I don't know. I think he can also pull off the psycho part. I hope he doesn't go method, otherwise the kill count's going to go up. I don't know. I'm starting to get excited for this. I might go actually see Queer next week now that it's in theaters in Canada and it got a widespread release. My girlfriend and I have been saying that we maybe want to go see that, so might go check it out after I see The End on Monday. But Austin Butler as Patrick Bateman, I don't hate it. I think Jacob Elordi I thought was a very uninspired choice, and bear with me, I think he is not that great of an actor, Jacob Elordi. He's very good at being in one tone and he doesn't really have a lot of range to me. I liked him most, I guess, as Elvis. I wasn't that excited once the project was announced and it was kind of assumed, oh yeah, Jacob Elordi's probably going to be cast as Patrick Bateman. That didn't sound that great. But after seeing Fade Rotha, Austin Butler, I think he's got the chops to do it. Let's move on to our final story before we get on to Kraven the Hunter. Clayface is officially a movie that is in the works at DC Studios with Mike Flanagan writing. I think we've talked about this in the past briefly, but it was officially greenlit this week and got press coverage. Mike Flanagan, if you don't know, Haunting of Hill House. I think he's doing a new Exorcist movie, as well as Bly Manor and all those Netflix scary ones. People love Mike Flanagan. So fresh off the success of the HBO series The Penguin, Variety says DC Studios has officially greenlit a feature film centered around Clayface, the shape-shifting Batman villain, from scriptwriter, Dr. Sleep filmmaker as well. Dr. Sleep is a sequel to The Shining, and a lot of people like it. You would think The Shining sequel is not a good idea, but people kind of love Dr. Sleep. I don't know. So plot details are scarce, but filming is expected to begin early next year. Matt Reeves and Lynn Harris will produce through their company, 6th and Idaho Productions. Now here is the snag, and we do have a little bit of perhaps details of the Batman Part 2 according to some Twitter rumors and someone I follow, Dan Marcus on Twitter. Apparently, the Batman Part 2, both Scarecrow and Clayface are going to have big parts, but it's going to be a much more subdued, I can't remember what his name, Matt something or Mark something for Clayface, and Joker is going to be in Arkham the whole time and he will escape at some point in the movie is I guess the idea to set up the third film. I've also heard some rumors that apparently they're going to film Part 2 and Part 3 back to back. I don't buy that because there's no way a script is ready for Part 3, but this is interesting interesting, and it's not confirmed whether this is Elseworlds project. He's going to be part of the Batman Part 2 and then get that movie of Elseworlds, or what's happening here, or if it actually is a DCEU, because apparently he's in Creature Commandos this week. I think I haven't seen episode 3 yet, so I really like this idea. I think Mike Flanagan, definitely a good writer. He just did Life of Chuck, which won the best film at the Toronto International Film Festival. All of his Netflix stuff has been very well received and well reviewed. He has a lot of fans. People are excited about his Exorcist film, so it's kind of a no-brainer, and I think Clayface could be a very interesting thing for him to make it kind of horror elements, a little bit more on that. I mean, if he did a Scarecrow movie, I think he would kill that as well, but Clayface is a fun one that we haven't really seen at all in any Batman media, live action at least. We've seen him in lots in the cartoons. I love Clayface, but this just seems like a no-brainer. A lot of good news this week for me. Even a lot of the nominations, I thought it's been a very positive week. I don't know, I'm going into it happy. There was also the news that Sony is no longer going to be doing their movies that are spin-offs of Spider-Man characters. So today, with that being said, this is our final review for a Sony Pictures universe of Marvel movies review. I guess I don't know how to wrap that up, but let's get into Kraven the Hunter. Timestamps below if you don't want spoilers, if you don't want any plot details because you're waiting to see it. Skip right to what else I watched. Lots to talk about there. Here we go. Kraven the Hunter. Kraven the Hunter is a 2024 action sci-fi film coming in at 2 hours and 7 minutes. It is directed by J.C. Chander, who has done Triple Frontier, Margin Call, A Most Violent Year. Triple Frontier was a Netflix film, if you don't know. It's written by Richard Wank, that can't be right. Richard Wank, who did The Equalizer 1 and 2, Expendables 2, Jack Reacher, Never Go Back, The Magnificent Seven, so very much an action writer. The budget, apparently it was $130 million with reshoots, but it was initially $110 million. Reviews, it's not good so far. 14% on Rotten Tomatoes, 33% on Metacritic, 5.5 on IMDb, 2.2 on Letterboxd with a mode rating of 2 stars. Box office, predicted to do $13 million to $15 million opening weekend. Absolutely terrible. That's the same as Madam Web. Google's in a nutshell, fantastic. Brooding, I guess. Thrilling, kinda. It's currently out everywhere, so you can go see it. The synopsis for the film: villains aren't born, they're made. Kraven Kravinoff's complex relationship with his ruthless gangster father, Nikolai, starts him down a path of vengeance with brutal consequences, motivating him to become not only the greatest hunter in the world, but also one of its most feared. The film stars Aaron Taylor Johnson as Sergei Kravinoff / Kraven, Ariana DeBose of West Side Story fame and other other movies that are bad, actually. West Side Story is great, not that one. She plays Calypso. Fred Hetchinger of Gladiator 2. The White Lotus plays Dmitry Smerdyakov, or the Chameleon, so that's Nikolai's bastard son. Russell Crowe plays Nikolai Kravinoff. Alessandro Nivola plays Alexei Sietsevich, or the Rhino. Nivola, if you don't know, from the Goal movies. That's a deep cut for soccer fans. My brother, if he's listening, he'll know that. He plays what's the British dude, what's his name? The British dude that's playing at the same time as Santiago Munez at Newcastle and Real Madrid. Christopher Abbott plays the Foreigner. Levi Miller plays young Sergei Kravinoff. Billy Barrett as young Dmitri. Diana Bobnikova as young Calypso. So Kraven the Hunter. First thoughts, you know what? It's maybe I'm being sentimental, but it was not completely awful. It was bad. Like it was a bad movie. Watching it is inherently bad, but maybe I'm just a little sad this is all coming to an end. It felt like more of a bad action streaming movie, like something you would see on Netflix, versus a bad blockbuster wasted hundreds of millions of dollars movie, if you know what I mean. It's a terrible movie that feels very poorly put together, but in an odd way, I was kind of entertained by this. And I don't know, in a year of Madam Web, Dear Santa, really bad movies, I was like, this is maybe, I don't know, the lesser of the evils, and feels much more like a standard bad movie, more than a all-time bad movie that Madam Web was. But let's get into the performances. Aaron Taylor Johnson as the titular main hero, or villain, but I guess he's a hero in this. Kraven the Hunter / Sergei. I don't know, sort of mixed feelings. He does the action parts really well, well, which we'll talk about in the review. He kind of has this animalistic thing going for him, but he's just in every scene constantly hitting the Zoolander blue steel, looks past the camera in like a smoldering way, and it's very funny. It's extremely cheesy. It's more of a cologne commercial or like a modeling commercial than a film. And I was like, what is this guy doing? I think he definitely has like what it takes to lead action movies. I liked him in Godzilla 2014. He's good in the Kick-Ass movies and everything else. Like, he's good in Tenet. I'm excited to see him in Nosferatu. I think he's a very good actor. He's also, we just got this week the 28 Years Later trailer, and he's leading that film. I think he looks very good in that. It's just something about him. I think it's honestly the writing and the dialogue that kind of lets him down here, and some of his acting choices are very strange, but I don't know. He's fine, but he's not great. That's what I can say. Ariana DeBose, however, as Calypso, someone needs to get her agent and fire their ass, because dear God, she is just doing terrible movie after terrible movie. She won supporting actress for West Side Story, didn't she? And since then, woof, and she is terrible in this. Very bad. Her dialogue is horrendous in this. Fred Hetchinger, I'm not sure how to say his last name, is Dimitri / the Chameleon. I don't know. He has this like ability to mimic people's voices perfectly, which plays out in some really weird ways throughout the film, but I'll wait till spoilers to talk about that. He's honestly not that bad. I was kind of surprised at how he's putting in an okay performance in this, and that's maybe where my expectations were a little bit surprised in this. I thought everyone was going to be terrible in this, and then there was a couple times where I was like, oh, they're actually kind of having a little bit of fun. Like, they're not completely butchering this, and I don't know, he was pretty okay until the final scene. They kind of take a turn with him that I was like, oof, yikes, not as good. As for Russell Crowe, however, as Nikolai Kravenov, I don't know, get that bag, dude. He is a definition of phoning it in this. Very bad. He's putting on a very acting class Russian accent, or like a Russian accent you would do at a party. It's just very standard, stereotypical bad movie Russian accent, and he's a villain, I guess, but not really. Whereas Alessandro Nivolo as Alexei Sietsevich, or the Rhino, maybe the highlight of the movie for me. I actually really liked him as the villain. I thought he was doing a good job, and I think in a much better movie he would have been a really good Rhino, or like this kind of evil scientist dude, I guess. He was giving it absolutely everything in every scene, and I thought he really worked in this. It's weird. I've seen praise from other reviewers I watch for him, so I know I'm not crazy. When he's in human form, which is about 95% of the movie, pretty decent. No one else in the movie is really able to pull it off, but he's doing it pretty good. And Christopher Abbott as the foreigner, like, what the hell? Sure, I don't know. He feels like he was kind of added in a last-minute draft, or, oh, we need another Spider-Man character to just throw in here, so they got the foreigner. Odd choice. He's not really in the movie very much, so there's not much to say, but every time he is in it, like, major stuff happens. His effects were cool, but it feels more like an Easter egg type character that they're like, oh, this is one for the fans, than actually being important to the plot. He doesn't really do anything. Finally, Levi Miller as young Sergei and Billy Barrett as young Dimitri, I do think they deserve a little bit of props, because it's tough to be the flashback characters of, oh, I'm the young version. Like, as we've seen in Morbius, when you play the young version of the main Sony character, it can get pretty rough, and they can give you some tough dialogue. But oddly enough, I thought it worked with the young brothers. I was kind of like, you know what? I'm enjoying this. Like, if this was just a movie about the young brothers, I think I'd be okay with this. But it's when we get to the present day stuff that it really all falls apart for me. Like, Levi Miller, weirdly enough, looks exactly like Nicholas Hoult. I was so thrown off thinking it was Nicholas Hoult half the time. It was just a spitting image. He could play young Lex Luthor. James Gunn, if you're going to do anything with young Lex Luthor, get Levi Miller in there. But yeah, performances, I don't know, pretty mixed bag. Some good, some okay, some pretty terrible. But let's get into the story, because one thing about these Sony movies, they will give you a story that you can certainly talk about. Well, it's Kraven the Hunter, dude. I really don't know what else to say. He's a guy with animal powers that hunts down people who take animals as trophies. If I told someone, all right, Kraven the Hunter, what do you think of? And I gave you like a little blurb, like, okay, he's a Russian with animal instincts, and he hunts down people, and I just told you kind of bare bones details, I think you could come up with a similar storyline or a similar script as to what's here. It's very basic, and maybe, I don't know, maybe less is more in a sense, and that's why it worked more than Madam Web, because Madam Web is like really kind of going off the rails everywhere, versus I think it's kind of the editing that lets this movie down. The story is he's a guy with animal powers that hunts people down. That's pretty much it, and it's quite bare bones. It felt like there wasn't an evident main problem or a real story until at least 40 minutes in. I was like, what is our conflict here? What are we leading towards? And then 40 minutes in, you're like, oh, okay, I guess that's the issue. All right, yeah, sure. Because that's really what this movie was. Every scene I was just saying to myself, why not? You know, pour one out for last time's sake, say Sony. And the story doesn't really have a lot of twists and turns. Like I said, it's very bare bones. And pretty much like what you see is what you get. It kind of goes step by step what you would expect. This is, I think, in 2002, I'm trying to remember who said, maybe it was David Ehrlich in his review, said like, whoever wrote this, I guess, Mr. Wank or whatever his name is, it feels like the only comic book movie they ever saw was Elektra, the Jennifer Gardner 2003 Daredevil spinoff. So true, because it is very, and you could say this about all of the Sony movies, they're very old-fashioned comic book movies of, okay, we gotta introduce character, flashback, current day, it's a family issue, and they have to come to terms with their past as well as, you know, very bare bones origin story, which, hey, you know, it can work sometimes. It's just Sony. Audiences, you know, we've moved on past that. You gotta give us more. So, I don't know, it feels a very old-fashioned hero stuff. And I was surprised how much I didn't mind the flashback stuff. Like I talked about a little bit there in the performances. The two young brothers are actually, like, not terrible. I was surprised how much I thought I would honestly not mind a young Kraven movie. I would be fine if it was just him, young Kraven, and like he's just got his powers and he's abandoned home and he's like, you know, developing himself. Like, I don't know, that stuff was pretty okay. But having said that, in the flashback, we see Calypso's origin story, aka her grandma basically giving her some cards and a potion while explaining directly to the audience how this stuff all works, and with some shockingly awful ADR slipped in randomly, stiff dialogue, hazy background, all that chef's kiss stuff that we love from Sony. Like, man, that's where, you know, we got the classic younger actor playing an older character that's pretty bad, and I hate to say it, the young Calypso just did not work. I feel so bad for her. I hope she finds other work with serious filmmakers. I mean, it is cool, you know, it must be cool to be in a Sony movie, and any work is good work, but oh dear God, they did not do her any favors, or the actress of the grandma. But yeah, like the brother stuff, surprisingly okay. I felt the brotherhood relationship was maybe the coolest part of the story, or like the heartbeat of this story, and I thought it actually worked a lot of the time, because the whole story, as you can know from the trailers, his brother gets kidnapped and it's him trying to find him. He's a hunter. He needs to hunt down whoever took his brother. All that stuff kind of worked for me, and I was like, at least there is a steady structure of a story, almost. Yeah, guys, I don't know, is this a positive review? No, it's not, because like my rating of the stars was not great. For Sony, this is like a miracle that this worked. Pacing wise, like 2 hours and 7 minutes I think is pretty standard. Almost all of I think Madam Web was like maybe 90 minutes. I think it was a lot less, but like the Morbius and three Venom movies are all roughly 2 hours, right? So it's 2 hours 7 minutes, but boy oh boy, there's a few portions in here where I was really feeling my attention drift, which usually does not happen in the movies. I think that's only happened a couple times this year with like Wicked. There's a couple 5 to 10 minutes, like the, you know, flashback with Calypso's grandma, or Kraven meeting his dad or meeting his brother, or just talking with Calypso as well, where it's 5 to 10 minutes in classic Sony fashion of just these big, you know, monologues and talking about the past and philosophical discussions that are basically PlayStation 4 cutscenes. I've literally seen more charisma and better delivery in a mesothelioma commercial, and the movie is filled with bad accents. Like I said, Russell Crowe, his very American interpretation of a Russian accent, just like, I know Russell Crowe is from New Zealand, right? Yeah, it's just like not very inventive, doesn't feel authentic. It's very classic. Someone at a party could do it just as good. And Russell Crowe, I mean, his entire performance, you could probably pull in any TV commercial actor and they would do it almost a better job than Russell Crowe. Aaron Taylor Johnson's accent as well. I don't know, it's always fascinating when you get British actors doing American accents, because sometimes they can be really great. Like Nicholas Hoult, speaking of, does an amazing American accent, and I'm excited to watch Juror number 2 next week. I mean, Robert Pattinson as well, phenomenal Russian accents. Tom Holland does a very good Russian accent. Robert Pattinson and Tom Holland both do very good American accents, but then you get Aaron Taylor Johnson and he's doing a much more Hugh Laurie Dr. House American accent, or like Benedict Cumberbatch Doctor Strange American accent, where it's just like very bog standard and over announcing everything like this. And Fred Hechinger, he does, I think in one scene only, he does a Russian accent, and it's when he's an adult in the movie, which is even weirder. There was one scene where I was like, for 5 minutes, is he doing a light Russian accent? It caught me so off guard, and I was like, is this like the first scene they shot? And they were like, yeah, Fred, you're gonna do a Russian accent. And then the rest of the time filming, they just completely forgot. Oh yeah, doesn't Fred have a Russian accent in this? Whoops, we forgot. What else can I talk about? Non-spoilers. The Rhino's goons, really funny. They're the least most henchmen looking people in the world. The main goon that he has is like this British guy who honestly looks like he works in a museum, but he's wearing a tracksuit that does not suit him at all. He is one of the friendliest people. I don't know who the actor is. I didn't pull him up, but he looks like someone you would ask for directions when you're a tourist. He looks like the nicest man on planet Earth. This guy is too friendly to be in this movie. He cannot pull this off. He looks like he would say bless you. He looks like he would bring up the weather when you're giving him a haircut or something. He looks like the kindest man in the world, and he's playing the main henchman of the Rhino, and it was just one of the most ridiculous choices I'm casting this year. So I feel bad. Give him a friendly story. The biggest issue with this film, other than, bad CGI, etc., is the editing. I think the edit is really where this movie gets lost. Kraven the Hunter is the golden example of studio interference, other than, Madam Web. Every scene feels like it's in a different movie or a different version of the script. The first scene is present day, then it immediately cuts to a flashback and the origin story for about 30 to 35 minutes. It feels very odd. Like it's just a very, very jumped cut to flashback. And then you're just kind of in the flashback world for about 30 to 35 minutes. And then it cuts back to present day for, I want to say, the rest of the movie. And it's just very odd, feels a little bit out of sequence. I maybe would have started with the origin story. It's all a little weird. I don't know. It's very much lost on the cutting room floor. There's multiple scenes where you can see the reshoots really sticking out. Like the lighting does not match. People's hair clearly go from actual haircut to wig and makeup, and their clothes like have a little bit of a different angle on them, the way they're wearing them and stuff, and the angle that they're shooting at, all of the lighting around them again doesn't match, and ADR as well. Oh my god. The ADR is absolutely horrendous in this movie, just full of shots where people are a little bit further away, like the camera's a little bit further away, and you can see their mouths not moving. Oh, and yet they're speaking. How's that happening? The magic of film. So as everyone has said online this week, I'm happy that the Madam Web team is still employed because it is Madam Web levels of ADR. Sony loves their ADR, and I already kind of touched on the dialogue is just extremely stiff in this movie. I'm not sure why, but look, Sony, you make amazing video games, specifically Spider-Man video games. Please do not stop. I love every single one of them, but Sony makes terrible, terrible, terrible movies with these Sony characters or the Marvel characters that they're allowed to use. Spider-Verse, I think, works because it's completely out of Sony's control, but every Sony Pictures Universe of Marvel movie, Spunk, because I don't know what the official acronym they picked is, every scene has the same feel to it as a cutscene in a video game. It's very odd the way people speak in this, like they're trying to lead you on a quest and they're setting up something that's about to happen. Everything is just exposition in the movie or backstory. There's nothing truly about just the present moment. Everything is just about, when I was a boy, I found a tiger and I have been hunting ever since, and stuff like that. Talking about, well, when we were kids, you remember our mother on that one Tuesday in that July, and it's just weird. Every scene is backstory or complete exposition setting up what's about to happen, so there's no surprises. And that's, I don't know, it's kind of taking away from itself before it can get into really fun stuff. What's really funny about Kraven specifically, and I can't believe I thought of this during the movie, there is about 30 minutes of this movie where it's young Kraven. I'm convinced if you showed them the young Kraven flashback, you didn't tell someone what this movie was, you just asked them, what do you think this is? They would tell you, is this a Twilight prequel? It's the most Edward Cullen energy. He's pale, his eyes, his skin sparkling, he's running through a forest that's lit like the Twilight movies, he's jumping in trees, and if you ask them, he's ripping people's skin as well. I'm convinced if you asked a Twilight fan, what do you think this is? They'd be like, oh, is this a fan-made Edward Cullen prequel? Cool. A couple more things. Okay, CGI overall, pretty bad. Goes without saying. There's multiple parts in this movie where they can't even make the eyes changing color on Kraven look okay. It's so clearly cut and pasted on in like Final Cut Pro or something. And all of the Rhino shots, like the final Rhino thing that's in the trailer where he's fully evolved, looks okay at times. Thought it wasn't terrible for a model, but there is one scene in particular where he's standing in the lab and he's changing his medicine or whatever, and it's this kind of like medium shot of everyone in the room. The Rhino's just standing there and he's like half transforming, and I swear to God, I thought it was a PS3 cutscene that they had put in. That's the only way I can describe these movies, is they make video games look extremely good, because I was shocked. And of course his mouth isn't moving, and yet you hear his dialogue. It's so fascinating how that happens. And like the Rhino's not even in the movie, the actual Rhino where he's fully transformed. Do not get your hopes up. If all my Rhino heads, if you're going into this being like, oh, I can't wait to see the Rhino, don't get excited. I won't spoil it, but I'll talk about it. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's also hard not to spoil this movie. The trailer is every shot in sequence of this movie. Like the final shot of this movie, I won't say what it is very emphasized in the trailer. I guess, I don't know, like there's tons to complain about in this, but it's nothing you would be surprised by. It's a Sony Spider-Man movie, or a Sony Spider-Man adjacent Spider-Man movie. So the action's good, other than bad ropey CGI when he's running around. I honestly think they wanted to make a Spider-Man movie because this kind of just is a Spider-Man movie. You could really swap out Kraven and put in Spider-Man, and it would kind of work. The action's really good. Like, it's all shown in the trailer, so I don't need to be like, oh, this one scene you'll be really surprised by. It's like, you've seen it. All the good parts are in the trailer of this movie. So I don't know, in memoriam, let's rank the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel movies very quickly. Here we go. Let me make a letterbox list. I'm going to title it R.I.P. Spum, ranking Sony non-Spidey movies. In last place, of course, Madam Web, 1 star. Second last, Morbius, 1 star. Third last, Kraven, 2 stars. Third, we have Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Second, Venom, The Last Dance. And first, Venom, with 2.5 stars. So it goes 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 2, 1, 1. Honestly, Kraven, it's not that bad. I almost enjoyed it a little bit more than Venom, The Last Dance or Venom 2, but I think Tom Hardy is kind of what steals it from Kraven the Hunter. Overall, I actually hated this way less than I thought. It's not that I liked it, but I think going in, I was like, oh god, it's Sony. This is going to be an absolute train wreck. And it was. I am not at all defending this movie or being like, oh, it's amazing. It's very bad, but good for Sony almost going out on a high. It's like their most competent movie they've made in a little while. So honestly, I'd watch it again in a few years. I saw it in IMAX, which didn't enhance it at all or make it look any better. It's an okay 2 out of 5 stars for me. Kraven the Hunter, go check it out because it's actually not god awful, but it's not good. Let's get into spoilers. So there's a whole backstory, and we see this in the flashback with Kraven's mother dying, or she committed suicide. I immediately clocked it like, okay, his dad killed her, right? His dad made her go insane, but he's like, oh, she was sick, and the sick don't deserve funerals. It's very anti-suicide in this film. His dad clearly poisoned her. It's revealed later in the movie that Kraven is using these rosemary tips to poison or knock out guys, or I would say poison. He's killing everybody in this movie. He's never like a Batman knocking them out like pow, bam. It's just like he stabs them or puts a bear trap on their head. And we're in spoilers. I can talk freely now. It's, oh, what a relief. Yeah, so I don't know. Early in the movie, it's like, okay, yeah, clearly his mom went insane, but it's much more that his dad poisoned her, made her go insane, and it's the same serum that he's using later in life, Kraven, on his poison tips with his blow darts. The Foreigner, when they're in the forest, and this is like the one good scene with the Foreigner where he's battling Kraven, he shoots Kraven like 4 times with this special poison tips, and it makes him go insane like his mother experienced. But since he has advanced powers, I guess that healed him. Like, it kind of makes sense, but I'll get into another issue I have with the character of Kraven in a second. But that's where I pieced together like, oh, because he starts fearfully hallucinating. It's very Scarecrow type, spiders coming down everywhere. So I guess Kraven's deepest, darkest fear is spiders. So that's the closest we get to Spider-Man in this movie, is spiders showing up. And I don't know, the forest part kind of worked for me. I thought it was good action. It's good him being chased down and his brother escapes. So the Foreigner stuff was okay. I just wish they did more with our villains of interacting with Kraven. It's a lot of him just kind of fighting goons the entire movie, which I don't know, it's okay, but it's nothing great. So him getting the fear toxin stuff and having the spider hallucination, I was like, wow, this is almost a Spider-Man movie right now. Not really, but let's go through the Chameleon, because the Chameleon, his brother, is actually a big part of this movie. He's in it a lot and he uses his powers a lot. So he starts out, it's really weird. It's all just ADR that he can mimic people's voices. So maybe the biggest jump scare of this film was when Harry Styles' Sign of the Times started playing in the most awkward cut or needle drop I've experienced in a film in quite a while. And it's his brother at his dad's club singing like Harry Styles, and he sings like Tony Bennett. So I guess that's how he's making money as a singer, and he like is able to use his voice to sing like other artists, which that's like almost a good idea. It's fun. I like that idea, and it works mostly in the movie, but the ADR is weird, and it's just like hilarious lip syncing where it doesn't match up half the time. So I guess what I liked about the brother relationship is that he is very talented as this like impressionist, and he can mimic others, but he's not strong like his brother Kraven, and his dad doesn't respect him because he's not strong. So there's a good character arc for him of, oh, I want to be stronger so I get dad's love and respect. When he meets the Rhino, a thing that I think actually worked very well in this film is it was okay when they were interacting, the Chameleon and the Rhino, because the Rhino was like, oh, I used to not be strong strong and they didn't know what's wrong with me. And he tells him about this doctor in New York, I think, or maybe on the West Coast, I can't remember, that basically gives him his serum to make him stronger, the Rhino, and that's how he transforms into being the Rhino. So that was like an okay part where they trauma dumped an origin story in the film. It was actually kind of shocking how competently that was handled, and you can very clearly see like, oh yeah, the chameleon at the end of this movie, he's going to be like, oh, I went to a doctor and I got my chameleon serum, and we're going to see the chameleon. I knew it was coming. We'll talk about it in a second, but yeah, I don't know. It does an okay job with the chameleon character, and I think Fred Hetchinger, he's actually okay in this, and he kind of handles it competently as well. And like I said, end of the movie, you see him in full chameleon getup, like he has the full gray scalp. It looks like a PS4 animation, terrible CGI. He duplicates himself as Kraven when he's talking to Kraven. That's when his brother freaks out. He's like, oh my God, what happened to you? What did you do? And I don't know. It was interesting, but it looked terrible. But I was like, oh, at least that's fun that they're doing this. Whatever. It is exactly what you would expect. Like they're teasing the chameleon the whole time. You already know it's going to show up, and it delivered more than Madam Web with the Sydney Sweeney and those three girls like that wear their Spidey outfits. They never wear them during the movie, but at least in this, they were like, we're teasing this character the entire movie. At least we're going to show him to you. Calypso's cheesy line, the foreigners, every time he's about to mess with somebody, he counts to 3, and on 3 they kill themselves or he kills them, because I guess his power is he can mess with your mind and like slow down time. I don't know, it's kind of a fun effect in the movie. I'm like, this isn't actually terrible, and I think what makes it work is they just simplified his powers. Like, oh, he just makes you hallucinate and puts you in a trance, and then you'll kill yourself, and it doesn't have all this crazy CGI and stuff like that. So I don't know, good for them making it simple. But he starts counting to 2 when he's about to shoot Kraven in the eye, and then of course Calypso on 3 shoots him in the eyeball, kills the foreigner, and she goes, 3 motherfucker, on 3. And it's definitely the guy who wrote The Equalizer that made that line. It's the most Denzel delivery and like Denzel aura. Very cheesy, but it was kind of fun. I was like, oh, that was a bit lame, but I kind of enjoyed it. Okay, let me get into my main issue with Kraven, the character. There's really nothing that ever holds him back in the entire movie. Out of the 2 hours and 7 minutes, there's maybe 2 minutes in this film where someone is actually able to push back on him. And it's when the foreigner is messing with him and shoots him with a bunch of darts and he's hallucinating. He reflects back to his mom. Oh my God, I didn't even mention that there's these, every time he gets like his powers, he has like a vision or whatever. And it's the most, I don't even know, like job conference slideshow presentation or like yoga conference type thing. It was so funny. But anyways, he has these visions, and when he's against the foreigner in that minute and a half, 2 minutes, that's the only time in the movie you're like, oh, maybe someone could actually stop Kraven. And then the foreigner dies right away, and it's just like, okay. He kind of just has like indestructible plot armor the entire movie, and it can get a little bit boring. I think that's where this movie kind of falls down, is there's not a lot of troubles for Kraven the Hunter, our character, and we don't really see him face a lot of adversity, or I don't know, like, wow, he really is strong. It's just kind of like, yeah, okay, he's gonna beat up all 8 of these guys and murder them. Like, I guess earlier in the movie, yes, they kidnap his brother and make him run into a car, and then he doesn't get his brother back, and then there's the foreigner fight. So there's like 2 times in the movie where he somewhat struggles, but you know, like, it's just not surprising. You're like, he's gonna come back and kill everybody in a brutal fashion, and they show them all the kills in the trailer. They show everything brutal that happens in this film. I wish they really scaled back the trailer. So I don't know, if you're gonna make like this cool hero story, I would like to see the hero get pushed back on a little bit more, or be like incompetent. I don't know, it's weird to bring it up, but the Batman, like, at least he doesn't solve the riddles fully. Like, he is kind of a little bit incompetent and needs help. There's maybe once in this entire movie where you're like, oh, maybe Kraven won't do it, and then 30 seconds later, never mind, he killed everybody, all right, and Calypso killed the foreigner, so there's really no troubles here. It's a little bit boring and uncreative. But let's talk about the ending. I was so on the fence of, is this reshot or is this from like a second version of the script? Because I honestly think they reshot this movie 10 times. I know Aaron Taylor Johnson said they had been making it for like 2 years, or filming roughly for 2 years. I don't know if he meant filming or just like in development for 2 years. I would not be surprised if they shot this for 2 years, because there's so many points in the movie where I'm like, oh, this feels like this was shot months later. Oh, well, this feels like it was shot months after that. So it's hard to tell. But the grizzly bear ending where he finally faces his father, and it turns out his father was the one that sent his brother to get kidnapped and kind of gave everyone up and wanted Kraven to come back and try to save his father, or what, I don't know. Somehow his dad's the villain of all this. That's the explanation. So his dad gets killed by a grizzly bear at the end, and it's just boring. It's so odd. You can tell it's clearly on a soundstage. It's 3 tents and a fake fire, and they put them on the soundstage with water in their vodka bottles and were like, all right, now you need to kill your father. And I don't know, maybe it was in the original script, maybe it wasn't, but just a brutal ending. And then there's actually like 3 endings in the end of the movie. There's, what is it? There's when he sees his brother, there's when he kills his father, there's when he goes back to his father's house and his father has left him the vest and he sits and looks at himself in the mirror in like the iconic, quote, iconic Kraven pose, which is the final shot in the trailer and the final shot of the movie. They show the final shot of the movie in the trailer. That's what I was trying to say before. So dude, it's a mess. It's a complete mess, but I didn't hate it. It's just like so lazy and sloppy, but I'm like, whatever. For 2003, this probably would have been an okay movie. I don't know what else I can even say. There's so much stuff that I was like, while watching, oh, I need to talk about that. And then you forget it after because there's just so much crap in the movie to talk about. So overall, 2 out of 5, but I want to move on to what else I watched. Okay, what else I watched this week? Let's start with books. Justice League, The New 52, Volume 1, Origin. Video will be live on my social medias by the time you are listening to this. I'm about halfway through. I didn't know that the movie Justice League War is based on the New 52 run of Justice League. I love it. It's really good. I'm on Volume 1, and I'm already looking at getting the omnibuses because the New 52, I think it's Jeff Johns, really enjoyable. I like the characterization of everyone, and it makes me want to go back and just read the entirety of the New 52. The only one I'm like okay on the fence of is Superman. I just wish it was a little bit more humble Superman. He seems like very angry alien Superman, so I don't know what the hell happened to him in the New 52, but overall, it's really fun. I like it. It's definitely, out of all the comics I've read, I really like the Justice League run, and I would recommend it the most other than Batman Year One, but that's like more of a classic. Then let's move on to TV shows. Lots to talk about. SNL with Paul Mescal, a mostly fun episode. However, I do think it was maybe not the weakest of the season, but it was good. I definitely think Charlie XCX was better, but it was fun to see Paul Mescal just being super fun and ecstatic. He plays a lot of sad roles, and it seemed like he was very happy to be there, which I think earns you a lot more points as host, is if you look like you're really having fun and just giving it your all and just make yourself as comfortable as possible and completely buy in. That's why I think Charlie XCX was so great at it. So I think Paul Mescal was great at it. Chris Rock is hosting this weekend. I am dreading that, and Gracie Abrams as musical guest, another Nepo baby. So I don't know, I might watch the Chris Rock one this weekend, but I doubt it. I might skip that one. Then Creature Commandos started this week. Episode 1 and 2 I have seen. I haven't seen 3 as of yet. Really good. I very much liked it. It's not like amazing, out of this world, astonishing TV, but it's just super solid and entertaining. Like I said in my video that's on the socials, I like how contained it is. It's just like you get to know these characters and you only need to know what happens in this show. There isn't a billion other things you need to watch, and it doesn't feel like homework either, like, oh, I have to watch this so I can see Superman next summer. It's like, you can watch this, you don't have to watch it, you can just watch the movies. And I think that's what I'm most excited for with the new DC universe, is it's going to be very much choose what's canon, choose whatever you want to watch, and if you don't see something, that's fine. You can still enjoy the next thing you're excited for. So it was good. I really like the characters. Everybody's really fun. I specifically love Weasel. He's always been a character I've loved when James Gunn has used him in Suicide Squad and this. People probably find him annoying. I don't know what it is. It's just every time he's on screen, I laugh. I'm excited to watch episode 3. Hopefully it drops like tonight or tomorrow. Then my girlfriend and I finished Survivor Pearl Islands. Awesome season. It's from 2003. My family watched Survivor very early on, and I watched it like my entire life going into university. Then when I didn't have cable, I didn't watch it for a couple seasons, and then I caught up kind of later in university. It's great. Sandra wins the season, and it has Rupert, it has Johnny Fairplay, Andrew Savage. Sandra is so brutal, but honestly, she gives maybe my favorite tribal performance of all time at Final Tribal Council. Everyone is just ripping on Lily, and Sandra is just talking her game up and answering every question so perfectly. If there's any future Survivor players, I myself have thought about applying many times, but because I'm so injured right now, I can't. But as soon as my back is better, I'm applying to Survivor 1000%. If you ever want to see how to dominate a Final Tribal Council, watch Sandra. Then I watched episodes 1 to 3 of Skeleton Crew, the new Star Wars show. I really liked it. It's fun, it's low stakes, feels super disconnected from everything else. It's very Goonies, and I love the movie Goonies. If you're a Star Wars fan, like in recovery from The Acolyte or whatever else, and you just want kind of Star Wars to be fun and goofy again, I actually would recommend watching The Acolyte. It's a kid's show. It's very like Disney Plus, but it's just low stakes and enjoyable, and Jude Law is having a fun time, and it's good CGI and effects and everything like that. It's just like a well-made show. Then Then we have Dune Prophecy, Born Twice, episode 4. Very good. I really like the intensity that they're adding with every episode. I think they are building to a very good finale. And I forgot it's only 6 episodes. So we only have 2 more weeks of Dune Prophecy. I thought it was 8 or 10 episodes, but very short run. Again, Travis Fimmel and Emily Watson, outstanding performances once again this week. All the truth saying, and I really love the big council scene in particular. A really wonderful show. I'm very surprised how much better it's gotten since episode 1. I really like that. This week we saw Face Dancers for the first time. Theodosia, what's her name? Her student that she's bringing around with her is a face dancer. And I really loved all the Harkonnen stuff this week of like bringing House Harkonnen back, and she's working with her cousin. All very interesting to me, and how she treats her older uncle and her family name, but also what Tula is doing back at the school. The Mass Dream this week was really great. I think at least, even if it's not great dialogue sometimes, and a lot of the House Carino stuff with the children is very CW, what the show is really good at is the big technical stuff with all of the sisterhood. And I think it's nailing all of the like pre-Bene Gesserit stuff. That's all really good. What We Do in the Shadows, episode 9 and 10 of season 6. Come Out and Play with Skarsgård. One of the Skarsgård boys shows up in it. I don't know, the one that was in Mr. and Mrs. Smith for a second, and in Succession. He shows up. Episode 10, titled Promotion. Good episode, but there was a really weird motion smoothing on that episode compared to any other episode in the series that I thought looked a little bit odd. I don't know what that was. But finally, for TV shows, then I have 3 movies to talk about. Survivor 47, the first part of the finale, episode 13. Rachel. Oh my God, her and Genevieve having the mother off of the century. Amazing. Andy eating crumbs from Rachel's hand. They have a huge funeral procession for her all day, even though she and Sue know that she has an idol and she's going to play it and be safe that night, and they're going to get to pick who goes home. Hilarious. Watching Rachel all day play along with them. Oh, I'm so sad I'm going home. And guys, I get it. You know, I'm a very powerful player. Boom. Drops an idol. Wins immunity at final 5, pardon me, and sends Genevieve and Andy packing. Genevieve, I'm sad. I honestly wish the final 3 was Genevieve, Rachel, and maybe Sam or Andy. I just thought it would have been a very compelling discussion and a very good debate. And that's what I want at Final Tribal. But I am so pumped for the finale. I think, honestly, last week and this week were 2 of the most enjoyable episodes I've watched live with my girlfriend, at least. And we've watched 2 seasons together. It was great. I mean, for myself, in recent years, at least, it was one of the best episodes I've watched live. It was so much fun. And I honestly think Rachel has it in the bag. Apparently she's very good at fire is the implication I'm getting from everyone, or the impression. So I think no matter what happens, it's going to be Sam versus Rachel in fire, unless Sue wins the challenge and then gives up the necklace and says, I have to go against Rachel because I need to bump my resume or buff it up. I don't know, but I think the finale is going to be really great, and I'm looking forward to it. Finally, we have 3 movies to talk about. First of all, because next week we are doing Mufasa, I think, I was like, I should probably watch the Lion King live action remake, or quote, live action remake from 2019. And wow, am I ever happy I avoided it until now, because like, what's the point? Why are we doing this? This all just needs to stop, this live action nonsense. It's so dead on arrival. There's nothing visually interesting. Lin-Manuel Miranda's music in it as well. Ugh, not a fan of that live action Lion King movie, and the voice acting is so boring and dry. Visually, it's so gray and like Wicked or a lot of the Marvel movies. It just has that blandness to it where they're in the unknown, like a Deadpool and Wolverine. Not a fan. I gave it 2 stars out of 5. I definitely would not watch it again. Then I watched Sweethearts, which is an HBO or Max. Yeah, HBO Max, starring Kiernan Shipka and Nico Haraga. Really good. Honestly, it's a cute little movie. So the synopsis is 2 college freshmen who decided to stick with their high school sweethearts have to pull a turkey dump and break up with them over Drunksgiving, the one chaotic night before Thanksgiving in their hometown that puts their codependent friendship to the test. It's a cute movie. Nothing special. I gave it 3 out of 5. I would totally recommend it. It's a fun movie, but the B story does really take over. But finally, the creme of the crop, creme de la creme, Dear Santa, starring Jack Black. One of the worst holiday movies I have ever seen. I have no clue who is it made for. Really terrible. I wrote a review on my social media. Go check it out there, but I don't even know what else I can say. I don't know who it's made for. Is it for children or adults? It goes from like G rating to R rating scene to scene. It's weirdly edited. There's just like a 20-minute Post Malone concert in the middle of it where it looks like it was shot in in a corner store or something. It looks like a car commercial. There's a whole Tesla ad in the middle of it as well. It's not even a fun like Hallmark Netflix type movie. It's literally just a bad movie in general. It's not even endearing that it's because it's so bad. So that's all I got for movies this week. It was a lot of TV this week actually, and I'm looking forward to watching a couple more movies this week. I'm going to see The End. I might go see Interstellar in IMAX if I have time, but I doubt it. This weekend I'm going to watch Carry On, 12 Angry Men, and I think there was something else. Oh, I might watch A Quiet Place Day 1 because that's on Paramount Plus, which my parents have. But yeah, I think that does it for what else I watched. And I think that's going to do it for episode 48, Kraven the Hunter. What a ride it's been, Sony. Thank you for your service. 6 really mediocre movies that never got off the ground. Who would have thought that if you want to make a good Spider-Man movie, you might need Spider-Man in it? But what did you think of Kraven the Hunter? Comment down below. Shoot me an email. Get in touch with me. As always, please rate and review the show 5 stars on all of our streaming platforms. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Acast. Give us a 5-star rating or comment down below and write a nice review. It might even be read on the show. Follow us, download the episode so you have it everywhere you get your good podcasts. Also, you can share it with a friend, share it to social media. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment. What'd you think of Kraven the Hunter? What's your favorite holiday movie? What's your favorite holiday snack? When do you start really celebrating kind of the holiday festive season? Are you a December 1ster? Are you a first snowfall person? Are you like as soon as Remembrance Day or Thanksgiving is over? Depending on if you're Canadian or American, I guess. I'd love to hear from you. Go subscribe on the YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when the podcast drops, as well as all the shorts. You can actually email the show if you want to get in touch with us. watcherofallthings@gmail.com. We also have social media. Instagram and Threads are just at watcherofallthings. And the TikTok is watcher.of.all.things. You can also follow my personal Letterboxd account. That's KikiJ70, KIKIJ70. Follow me on there. Drop a comment under one of my reviews that you found me through the podcast, and I will follow you back. Let's make a little community, shall we? Next week, it's a big one. I think we are going to do Mufasa, the Lion King, which apparently isn't terrible. I don't know. I've heard very mixed reviews of some people saying their expectations were at least surpassed, but I've seen a lot of critics saying it's actually good. I think it's Barry Jenkins who did it, so I don't know. We'll see. I didn't see the last Lion King movie until it was, I don't know, 4 years later, 5 years later, and I watched it on Disney Plus. So I think I'm going to see Mufasa in IMAX on Thursday, and we got a few episodes left before the new year. It's going to be episode 49 next week. We're getting closer to 1 year of the podcast. I'm excited to do a 1-year special. It'll probably just be a longer episode. I don't know. But I think that's going to do it for now. Thank you all so much for the love. Thank you so much for listening, downloading, following. I hope you have a wonderful December week, and I will see you in the next one.